So good evening, good afternoon, and welcome for this Faculty of Business and Economics Graduate Research Information Session. So I hope you can all hear me okay and see me okay. Okay, so welcome. So thank you so much for joining us, and we're sort of inspired that you've taken an interest in our programs, and hopefully by the end of this session you'll have received a lot more information from me, from our panelists, and also you have an opportunity to ask any questions during the whole session today. So today, let me just give you a bit of an background. We'll begin the session with an overview of our doctoral programs. We'll cover some important information about the program structure, the scholarships, why you might choose to do your PhD at Melbourne. And then I'll be joined by the doctoral program in economics graduate research director, three of our current PhD students in economics and accounting for a panel discussion where they discuss the research experiences in the program. So as I've said, that if you have any questions about the topics covered through the session, about the faculty graduate research program, you're welcome to submit questions and there's a team behind the scenes who are able to answer them. But let me first start with something very important. It's the acknowledgement to country. And I'll start by acknowledging the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung people, and they are the traditional owners of the unceded land on which the Parkville campus stands, and that's where we are based. We also pay respect to the elders, past and present, including all the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Island people who may be with us today. The University of Melbourne acknowledges the traditional owners on the unceded land on which we work, live, and learn. As I said, the Wurundjeri, Woiwurrung, and Bunurong people is where we are based, the Yorta Yorta Nation peoples, and the Dja Dja Wurrung people. The university also acknowledges and is grateful to the traditional owners, elders of knowledge, holders of all Indigenous nations and clans who have been instrumental in our reconciliation journey. We recognise the unique place held by the Aboriginal and Torres Islander people as the original owners and custodians of the lands and waterways across the Australian continent, with histories of continuous education, connection dating back 60,000 years. We acknowledge their enduring cultural practices of caring for our country. And once again, we sincerely pay respect to elders past, present, and future, and acknowledge the importance of Indigenous knowledge in the Academy. As a community of researchers, teachers, and professional staff and students, we're privileged to work, learn every day with Indigenous colleagues and partners. So thank you for honouring that acknowledgement. So first of all, let me start. So why do a PhD? So I think up front, I'm going to say that for our faculty, our graduate researchers, the faculty PhD program, incredibly important to us. We invest in our students in the program continuously so that we graduate students to be impactful global researchers, academics, individuals, leaders, but also we care for the whole of researcher experience, inspiring them to really grow into the best of themselves. So we genuinely care about quality education as well as promoting a healthy, positive culture and community. So why would you want to do a PhD in the first place? If you want a career in academia, then you will definitely be required to do a PhD. So that's pretty standard and obvious. But increasingly, other career paths are also, they also require some level of research skills. For instance, careers in government, public sector, if you want to progress into leadership positions, definitely, as well as research consultancy bodies. But our doctoral programs are particularly valuable because they have 2 years of advanced level coursework, which will give you a very solid foundation for your career. And of course, you'll have all the skills that come from doing a thesis, from creative and independent thinking, to knowing how to conduct analysis, to efficient and effective written and oral communication skills, and so much more. But it's a commitment, it will be 5 years of your life. And it's important to note that just because you like and you are good at coursework, it doesn't necessarily mean that you will enjoy research. And so it's not always an easy transition, but we do support you as much as we can from the coursework stage onwards into that transition. So when you come, you don't have to have a supervisor up front, but by the end of the second year of coursework, and I'll talk about that in a second, you will have a good idea of who your supervisory team will be. Of course, there's always uncertainty of a job in academia at the other end, but our programs are absolutely designed to prepare you for academic careers, and so that you are internationally competitive also. And that's why we've invested so much in these programs, because we want to give our students the best chance of being internationally competitive. So, and I think because of that, these programs stand out as being the best in the regions because of that level of preparation that we give you. So finally, it's important to note that our applications are assessed competitively, since there are a limited number of places. So when you apply, do take time to prepare for your application, to give yourself the best possible chance. So I've been talking about how we prepare our students for careers in academia and beyond. And here's an example of the first placements of our students for the last few years. So we've got, Booth School of Business, University of Chicago, Tilburg School of Economics, HEC Paris, Nuffield College, Oxford, University of Manchester and Warwick. So these are really highly rated academic institutions. And so we feel that, we are continually investing, and we feel that we are achieving the results in terms of placements. So, but in more generally, Melbourne graduates, you'll find them as Nobel Prize winners, leaders, influencers, networkers. Alumni are Governor Generals, former Prime Minister of Australia. So significant people graduate from the University of Melbourne, I can say that. So let me just talk a little bit about the doctoral programs and some quick facts. So, so as an overview, so the doctoral program at Melbourne requires 2 additional years of coursework compared to the standard Australian 3-year PhD degree. So students will undertake a full year of training in the first year in the core subjects. So if it's economics, they'll be revolving around macro, micro, econometrics and another subject through the 2 semesters. And then in the second year, there'll be an additional year of advanced coursework in the narrower fields of your study. And by that time, you'll have an idea of, this is what I want to specialize in. It's the premier program in this region. And so when you add the 3-year research phase, it's 5 years full-time, basically, 2-year advanced masters, 3 years PhD. By the end, you earn both the Advanced Masters of Commerce and the PhD, and there's a hurdle requirement to go from year 1 to year 2, and then year 2 before progressing into the research phase of the PhD. So students are very well supported at Melbourne, and let's just have a look at the levels of support. So funding arrangements, we're on par with the highest level of stipend in Australia, so that's 37,000 a year from this year. When students come here, candidates come here, they're given a relocation grant. Once you're confirmed in the research phase, every student gets 15,000 to spend for everything to do that will enhance their research experience during the program. So that's buying data, traveling, conferences, experiments, etc., etc. In addition, we have a traveling abroad scholarship for conferences, workshops, field trips, etc. And they're up to $4,000 from the faculty, and that amount's matched also by the departments as well. So you've got a significant amount of funding there as well. Of course, as standard, you're given your own desk, your workstation, computer, and resources from the department. And we have a fantastic student society as well. And they have their own common room, their own seminar room. There's a great sort of peer-to-peer support framework there as well, and of course networking and social events as well. So you're in good company, and you're incredibly nurtured by that community, I would say. So, but why Melbourne? So it consistently is in the most livable cities in the world every year. It is very much sort of a continental cafe culture, and amazing sports events at Grand Prix to tennis, etc., which you might know about. It's the capital of Victoria, so it's absolutely sort of cultural hub, very multicultural. And it's very, very easy to get around as well. We're quite close to the centre of the city, and in the centre of the city, there's a free public transport network, so quite very easy to move around. But let's just have a look at a little bit of a video, and you can get a feel of where we are. You'll see our building in a second, and where we're placed in Melbourne. So let's have a look. Thank you. So almost every building that and park you saw are within sort of 10 minutes walk of where our department is. So everything's quite close and accessible. Okay, so now you listen to me talk about the programs, let's hear from others. So I'm going to be introducing a panel, and you will have the chance to ask them many things or anything, but hopefully my questions will cover a lot of the questions that you would like to have answered. So let me start by introducing the panel. So first of all, we have Associate Professor Reshad Ahsan. So Reshad is an Associate Professor of Economics with research interests at the intersection of international trade and development economics. His research explores the labour market effects of trade in developing countries with a focus on understanding the impact of trade on inequality and workplace safety. He also studies the link between trade, firm innovation, and productivity in developing countries. His research has been published in leading economic journals and has been funded by major local and international funding bodies. He's a very dedicated graduate director, and I do know that because he's in my department. Jinjin Chen is a PhD candidate in economics, so an early candidate. So her research interests include environmental economics and industrial organization, both are really key specialities in economics, and with a focus on China's electricity market and electric vehicles. Jacob Carino is also from economics, a little bit more down the line. He's a PhD candidate whose research focus is microeconomic theory, and more specifically game theory and market design. And then Ahsan Jiang is a PhD candidate in the Department of Accounting, and he has recently submitted his thesis, so he is at the very end, waiting for examiners' reports. He'll join Hong Kong University Business School at the University of Hong Kong as an assistant professor in July. So congratulations, Ahsan. And his research lies at the intersection of accounting, environmental economics, and public policy, focusing on the role of disclosure and transparency in environmental and regulatory settings. So if all the panel can come up, let me just then ask a few questions. So let me start with Reshad. So Reshad, why would someone who's considering a PhD in economics select the University of Melbourne as their destination? So that's the first question. And as a follow-up question, what kind of support is offered to students when they're in the doctoral program? And perhaps if you can talk about the whole faculty when you're answering that question.
Sure. Thank you, Cal. In terms of the PhD programs we offer in the faculty, I think the most important selling point, and something you touched on earlier, is that we have tried to create a program that is at the global frontier in terms of the kind of graduate training provided, in the sense that we offer 2 years of coursework followed by up to 4 years for writing the dissertation. And increasingly, we're seeing internationally that's the length of the typical PhD, at least in economics, but I think that's true across departments in the faculty. And that allows our own students to have the time they need to develop their research and have a very successful market. On top of that, across the faculty, we have departments with a large number of academic staff. So a student coming in has access to a deep pool of supervisors, and importantly, a very vibrant research environment. So in my department in particular, but this is also true in others, you have weekly field-specific seminars, often weekly or fortnightly field-specific reading groups. So lots of opportunities for graduate researchers to read papers, discuss papers with academics in their fields of interest. So it creates this sort of back and forth, and you learn a lot of the soft skills associated with writing papers. How do you write an introduction? What is the way you want to highlight strengths of your work, etc. So there's lots of these soft skills that are developed through these interactions. And all of that, I think, is stuff, and we can see the sort of the effect of all of that on the placement record that we have across the board in the faculty. Again, you've showed us a few examples before, but not just in academia, but also in industry and government, both in Australia and overseas. We have increasingly a strong record of placing students in great jobs after they finish. And I think that's a testament to the new 6-year model that we have, and the dedication and hard work of our own students, but also of supervisors. Now, with regards to the second question, so hopefully it's clear that we've tried to build this program that's at global standards. We've got a vibrant group of supervisors and PhD students who are also doing amazing work. But it's also really important to us as a faculty to provide as collegial an environment as possible. We do try to work very hard to ensure that students are working together in a collaborative way within cohorts, but also we're seeing it across cohorts. So a lot of the students in, say, macroeconomics will help each other out. Students doing experimental economics will help each other out across different cohorts. So both within and across cohorts, you see a lot of collegial interaction. And I think our programs generally are the right size in the sense that it's large enough where you have lots of students working on similar topics, but it's not so large that we lose touch. So I think we're at that right level, whereas graduate directors, we can be on top of things in the sense that get a sense of what students are working on, trying to help them navigate any issues that come up. So I think that size is really important. And on top, and just related to something I brought up earlier, because we have a large group of staff across departments, our graduate research to staff ratio is relatively low compared to other programs. And I think you get a lot more hands-on training as a result of that. There's just a lot more people who are here to help be part of your committee. Also people who are outside your committee, often they're quite open to providing suggestions and comments. And then lastly, I think we'll touch on this again, but I just wanted to flag that there's a lot of funding opportunities available for students. There is the $15,000 research fund, but on top of that, competitive funding for domestic and overseas travel. We've got scholarships. We have a student who's visiting Oxford right now, another student who just returned from University College London. Jacob returned from Berkeley last year. So there's lots of these international visits happening thanks to funding from the faculty. So stop there.
Yeah, a couple of things that you sort of saying. So with the placement data, if anybody wanted to see where our first placements were over the last 5 years, they're on our website. And also, yeah, just the traveling sort of scholarships, it's incredibly generous. And anyone who wants to go into academia, we absolutely support them to go and spend time in an overseas institution and absolutely the faculty cohort experience is really important to us as well. So thanks, Reshad. That's good wrap up. So let's just start with Jinjin, Jacob, and Ahsan. Just a first question for you all. Why did you want to undertake a PhD, and why did you choose Melbourne? And perhaps I'm going to limit you to about 90 seconds. So why did you want to do a PhD, and why Melbourne? So let's start with Jinjin, and then Jacob, and then Ahsan.
Yes, thanks, Carl. I feel like for me, I quite enjoy doing research. So I feel like by doing research, I can learn a lot of little stuff along the way to figure out everything. And also by doing PhD, I feel I am able to get systematically training and also get a lot of help from experienced researchers. And this will allow me to become a better and qualified researcher in the future. In terms of the city, I personally really like the weather in Melbourne and also the food in Melbourne. As an international student, I quite miss the hometown food, the Chinese food. But the good thing for Melbourne is that I can find all different countries' food in Melbourne. So this makes me feel less homesick. And also for the program at the University of Melbourne, as we have mentioned before, we have 2 years coursework study, which built a good foundation for me from the to start my research, and also allows me to have more time to discover my real research interest. Yeah, thanks.
Thanks, Jinjin. Lovely to hear why you like Melbourne, and it's so true. Very international. Jacob.
Thank you. Yeah. So I kind of just loved studying during my master's, and I wanted more of that. I enjoyed reading papers, and I felt like, oh, maybe I could start writing them. So I kind of, yes, I wanted to take what I've learned and start making a meaningful contribution. That was my main motivation for the PhD. Why Melbourne? So I did my master's here, and I've also kind of sampled other universities. And one of the things that's kind of stood out about Melbourne is, as Reshad said, it's quite collegial. I feel like a lot of the academics treat us like peers rather than students. And it's just a really nice environment to work in. Of course, I also love the city as well. As Kalvinder said before, it is a cultural hub. I'm a big coffee drinker, so that works really nicely for me.
It's a win-win then.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jacob. Thanks very much. Ahsan.
Yeah. So I actually completed my master's degree in accounting at UNML. And after that, like I worked as an auditor at a Big Four accounting firm for about a year. But during that time, I realized that like a career like an accountant or auditor like was not something I want to pursue like in the long run, because like I think we know that it has a very strong focus on compliance. You just need to like follow the established rules and standards. But I found like understanding the rationale behind these standards much more interesting. So that led me to pursue a PhD. So you can have the freedom to explore like the positives in the industry. Yeah. And why Melbourne? So I think like the doctoral program at UNML was like a great fit for me, because when I applied to the PhD program, I did not have a lot like research experience. But UNML was the only institution that offers this like 5-year program. So you will learn all the like the necessary like skills or the essential skills to be a good researcher in the first 2 years. Right. So that's exactly what I need. So yeah, and I also studied at UNML before, so I'm quite familiar with the faculty members here, and it's a very natural like decision.
Thanks, Ahsan. It's interesting that you took some time off and then realized that you wanted to come back to do a PhD, but you sort of felt, you know, that groundwork was really important as well. So it was good to hear that you adjusted well and you've got a good placement. Great. Okay, Jinjin, my first question now is for you. So you're sort of most early on in your PhD journey. And so can you tell us a bit more about your experience completing the 2-year coursework, and how did this prepare you for your PhD and shape your research?
Yeah, for me, I think the 2 years coursework study is really helpful and allowing me to learn more advanced econometric models, economy theory, which I haven't had a chance to learn them before. Also, from this 2 years coursework study, I try to learn different research fields, experimental economics, environmental economics. So this allows me to discover on what I am really interested and what research field I really want to do in the future. And also by learning those advanced subjects, and I learn different skills. For example, we have, for the second year, we have computational economics, which allow me to learn how to use Python. And that's really helpful for me right now when I do my own research. And also, I think it's like from first year to second year. First year we have many teamwork, but the second year we start to have more individual-based research project. It makes me move very smoothly from coursework study to research stage. Yeah.
Thanks, Jinjin. Great. It's good to hear that that valuing of that coursework, really, which sort of sometimes it might feel intimidating, but actually it allows you deep exposure into different fields, and then you can, as well as a great grounding, and then you can decide what you really want to do. So that's great. And I think just on that, I'm just addressing a question. Somebody saying, what would you advise for mid-career professionals who are interested in transitioning to a career in research and academia? So it's not uncommon. I mean, it's not so common, but it's not unheard of for experienced candidates to come and do their PhD at Melbourne. And I think Ahsan's example of, it is fine to take a break in not academia and then come back. And I think the coursework then really builds that foundation knowledge to enable you to then do research. So just answering that question that's just come online. Jacob, so this is my question for you. So can you tell us about the types of research, supervision, support and facilities available to you during your PhD at Melbourne?
Sure. So yeah, there's a really great support network. So obviously the supervisors are really helpful. I feel like they are almost like my therapist at times, so I can speak to them about anything. It's been really nice having regular check-ins with people like yourself and Reshad, who, we know you guys really care for us and you come into bat for us whenever we need help, so we appreciate that. I guess financial support has been really helpful as well. So the funding that Reshad mentioned, the scholarships, have allowed me to sort of travel abroad. I did a research visit in Berkeley last year. I was there for a couple of months, and that was just hugely beneficial for my career. I met a bunch of, really inspiring academics that I've always looked up to, and I found co-authors as well. So that has been great, and I couldn't have done it without the additional support and funding that the university provided. Also, my housemate is currently in Oxford doing the same thing, and he had a lot of the costs covered as well. So yeah, what's the support out there for us?
That sounds amazing. Amazing experience, Jacob, and it's good that you take opportunity. And I think you said something that, we do have your backs, really, and so we actually want you to do well. So I think to make the most of that is really it's up to you, and you do. So great. And Ahsan, so my question for you is, what's the social and research culture here like at Melbourne, and what sort of support do you receive from your supervisors and department?
Yeah, so I believe that the research culture at our department is awesome, and it's the same for other departments as well. So in our department, the majority of like our faculty members, they have a US background, so we have really good connections with the top schools in the US, and you will have the opportunity to interact with visitors from different schools. And actually for the doctoral seminars in our program, so half of them will be taught by our own faculty members, and another half will be taught by those like big name professors from the US. So the research vibe is like really good. And on top of that, like in the accounting department, so the PhD students would have the opportunity to like visit another like research school for about like for 1 or 2 semesters at the later stage of the program. So in the past, our students have visited like Stanford, Harvard, Columbia, and I just finished my visit at Rotman School of Management at University of Toronto last year. So on average, we only have like 1 or 2 PhD students like each year, but we have like a huge academic group. So the faculty to student ratio is very, very healthy, and they would do everything to help you succeed. And the last thing I want to mention is that like our faculty members, they value independence a lot. That's actually a very healthy like research culture. So they treat us like real colleagues. And I still remember that my supervisor told me, like you are your own boss, and we're just here to help you, right? So so I have the opportunity to like explore any interesting topics I want to do, right? So this also helps me to become an independent researcher, which is a very, very important signal for your prospective employers.
That's fantastic, Ahsan. That's really good. I think it's also something that you touched on is that because we have a large number of alumni in academia, and they are often the ones who are happy to host our PhD students to visits, or whenever people do travel anywhere, they do connect with them as well. So there's this sort of network of connections that sort of build and build and build. So which, you know, yeah, great that you're taking support of them as well. Great. So I have 2 more questions for each of you, and I think Reshad can also input at some point as well. But it's, you know, you've all said some really lovely things, and we haven't told you what to say. But clearly, it's not so easy doing a PhD, and there are challenges. And I know, you know, Ahsan would have probably, you've experienced them, Jacob, you would have, Jinjin, you know, different levels, you know, but you know, this is the long haul, really. And these are probably the most informative years of your life, so you do grow up in this time as well. And so my question for you is that, understanding that there are challenges when completing a PhD or doing a PhD, what do you do, or what have you done to get through those challenges? And how have you been supported through those challenges at Melbourne? So maybe start with, yeah, who would like to go first? Jinjin.
Yeah, thanks, Carl. Yeah, I would admit that doing PhD is not an easy thing, and it's a long journey because we have to stay here for more than 5 years. So, and I think it's quite normal for PhD students to feel overwhelmed, stressed, and frustrated. And we may feel overwhelmed because, like in coursework study, we have so many assignments, and we have to know how to do the good time management. And on the other hand, we have to come up with our research ideas, and it's common that we don't make much progress in our research because the progress is non-linear. By getting through those changes, I think I got a lot of support from my cohort. So I think it's really important for you to build a connection with your cohort. And in my case, in my cohort, we always try to encourage and support each other. And also we try to exchange our research ideas, and we try to provide good suggestion and feedback for each other. And also when I do my research, I got a lot of help from my supervisor. So my supervisor is really supportive, always try to encourage me and provide good feedback. And also I got a lot of help from faculty members. So if I have some confusions or questions, I always can reach out to them, and they are always willing to help me to solve those questions. Yeah, I think that I can get a lot of support from the department, and that is how I think it's really important. And that's the reason I quite enjoying studying here and enjoying doing research here. Yeah.
Right. We do really try and create a culture which is not competitive, but it's cooperative. And so, you know, it's a very much an independent journey, but very much you do it together at the same time. So I think that's what you're saying as well. Great. Thanks, Jinjin. Jacob.
Yeah, so it's definitely challenging doing a PhD. So 5 years is quite a long time. The transition from coursework to research was quite difficult for me. So suddenly being the boss of my own time and not having all this work thrown at me, I didn't really know how to handle that. But as Jinjin said, just, you know, staying in touch with your cohort, speaking to your advisors, and not just your advisors, but the other academics is hugely helpful. So everyone just wants to help you as long as you ask. There's been times when there's been personal disasters as well, and there's actual other official help that can sort of help you get through serious problems as well. Things like CAPS, the counselling services have been really helpful. Yeah, that's really it.
Thanks, Jacob. Yeah, just to mention that. So this year we did appoint 2 new faculty wellbeing officers. And for that very reason, that you can go and talk to them, and they're that first point of contact for anybody who's really struggling, and they've been fantastic. And actually with them, we're going to be putting out a pilot program this year, a wellbeing and performance program to support individuals before they end up falling. So yeah, good to hear that you do reach out, but also now I'm so inspired by the faculty then bringing the wellbeing supports actually into the faculty as well. So thanks, Jacob. And Ahsan, yes, so what did you do to get through the challenges, and how have you been supported through those challenges at Melbourne?
Yeah, so so the biggest challenge I have faced so far was a job search. Yeah, because when I was on the market, I already had a seemingly solid job market paper. So it was in the R&R at a top accounting journal. So of course I wouldn't be able to do that without receiving the rigorous training at the first place. But job market paper is not like the whole thing. So when I was on the market, I had very little knowledge about the whole recruiting process and also how it works. So my supervisors helped me a lot during my job search. So for example, we attended a major conference in the US, and she would introduce me around to her friends and help me to gain some international exposure. And also when I was preparing for my application files, so they offered a lot helpful suggestions, and would also help me to refine the files. And also before each interview and fly out, we would also conduct mock interviews and rehearse the job talks several times before my fly out. Yeah, so they would also actively promote my research and also promote me whenever they can. Yeah, so so I would say job market search would be the most stressful part of each PhD, and everyone would be tortured in the same way. But I received a lot of support from the department and from my supervisors. So so I'm very grateful for their support during this challenging time. Yeah.
Yeah, it's never an easy time for anyone, that end of career, end of PhD transition to yeah, a graduate placement. So I'm glad it was successful for you. It was all worthwhile. So Reshad, you've been PhD director for a few years now. So what would you sort of say that you have put in place, or you feel the pain point where students do feel challenges, and what would you advise as the PhD director?
I think from my perspective, I tried to meet every cohort every 4 to 6 weeks at least. And it's just us sitting around the room. Well, it's usually me asking them how things are going, what they've been working on. And I think for me, that's a really nice opportunity to just get a sense of how people are going. And there's the formal answer, and then there's the visual cues. And often from the visual cues, I can sense that there's perhaps a one-on-one meeting. So that's, for me, something I put in place as an opportunity to see how students are going. But I think as academics, we were also PhD students, sadly quite a long time ago, but still, we've been through that challenges. And I think, the clear pain point is communication. As a graduate researcher, when I was a graduate researcher, if I was struggling with something, it's not easy to go share that with someone. And so the point I try to emphasize with our students is that, this is not, it can feel like a solitary journey doing a PhD, but it doesn't have to be. You have your other members of your cohort, you have other PhD students who may be in different cohorts, you have your supervisors, you have me, you have other people in the department. Plenty of people who have been, you'll be surprised as a PhD student to know that a lot of the other people have been in a very similar situation. A lot of the challenges are common across generations, across cohorts, etc. So I think the pain point is just getting over that hurdle and willing to share some of the challenges, and then oftentimes it's just good to talk about it, but sometimes you also get a good sort of resolution out of it as well. So just from my perspective, just continuously encouraging students that if they are facing a challenge, not to think of it as something they have to deal with on their own, but something that they should seek advice on. It's easier said than done, of course, but it's just getting that message out and making students feel as comfortable as possible to share their challenges.
Yeah, and also picking up that point that when students go from honours or masters and they actually become part of the PhD program, they're colleagues in the department, and by and large, we treat them as colleagues, so it's absolutely fine for students to knock on your door and say what they're going through and things like that as well. So I think that as well, really, they shouldn't feel shy in communicating. Right. Okay, so thank you, everyone. I'm going to ask you to hang around, but I'm just in case there's questions coming up, but I'm just going to just display another slide, which gives a bit of information on how to apply. But also, now you've listened to us talk about all the programs, I'm sure you have questions to ask the audience who I can't see, but I know you're there. So yeah, so the first link tells you a little bit about how to apply, and there's a nice little QR code thing there. We also have a whole sort of site where we have responses to frequently asked questions, so you may sort of click on that or scan that in. And of course, after this session, you are welcome to continue to ask us questions at this address, and we will endeavour to answer every single one. But let's just take questions from some of you. So okay, let's just okay, so the first question is, and any of the panel can answer as well. So question is, I've noticed that not all universities require you to do a 2-year master's prior to taking PhD. Could Kalvinder or the student panel talk about how they believe this benefits them? I think Jinjin has spoken about that, and I think Ahsan also as well. But just to respond to that, the reason why we started moving to the 2-year program, coursework program, back in 2011, is that we were realizing that our students were not internationally competitive. And the standard in business economics is to do that 2 years coursework plus 3 to 4 years of research. And so that's why we started to move in this direction pretty rapidly. So in terms of how it's benefited, well, I think Jinjin did answer that quite well. Absolutely, complete grounding and confidence, deep research skills, but then a choice to then research in whichever areas you wanted. But also, we do want to graduate accountants or economists who have a good solid grounding So it's very rare that disciplines are very unique, but you do actually need that grounding as well. But also, it's necessary for placements. Okay, so another question is that how long did it take to assess applications? So for economics, it's the closing date is 31st of August, and we try and get back to you within sort of 8, maximum 12 weeks, between 8 to 12 weeks. But we're getting quite quick at that, so around about 8 to 10 weeks, I would say. The starting dates for economics and accounting are on the website, but as I just said, they are the 31st of August. They're both the same. Actuarial studies, which is located in the Centre of Department of Economics anytime through the year. And all other disciplines, so finance and management marketing, are in semester 2 start. And so, yeah, so can somebody from industry get admission to a PhD program given he or she doesn't have prior research experience? So Reshad, do you want to answer that one?
I think it's certainly possible. We try to be fairly flexible in the admissions process. Our typical first-year cohort has a wide mix of students with very different backgrounds. Some come straight from an honors or master's program. Others have a bit of work experience. And so in each student, we look for something different. So for a student coming from industry, we'd look for perhaps some research interests that are deeply connected to the work they've been doing. And I think that's potentially an advantage that could allow them to be a very successful researcher. So that would be something we would focus on in the interview process, is trying to get a sense of how much their work experience is going to feed into their research interest, which would be a very nice selling point.
Thanks, Reshad. Another question was that, do you have any recommendations for the direct entry PhD programs to bridge the gap from having a specific research area of interest to a research proposal? Are the resources there to help as well? So the resources are there. And for the direct entry programs, so I'll take the Centre of Actuarial Studies. Again, there's a small number of cohort, very dedicated staff who are there to support and work with you. So in terms of bridging the research gap from area of interest to proposal, I think it's just really having deep discussions with the faculty who are very invested in supporting their cohort of PhD students. But also, I think if it comes to the Melbourne Business School direct entry, we have had students who've come into that program and felt that they wanted to supplement their research knowledge and expertise, and they've taken coursework in the Faculty of Business Economics as well. So that's another way they can just get to know the faculty, deepen their knowledge, and then hopefully prepare them for research. Okay, so we have a few minutes left. Any other questions? Okay, so, oh, sorry. Yes, do you need to find your own supervisor during the application process? So for the 5-year program, you don't. Your supervisor, you start thinking about your supervisor. Actually, Reshad, why don't you answer this? Because this is a direct question.
Sure, yeah, so the answer is no. Essentially what we try to do, so what I will talk very frequently with the first-year students in the coursework phase, and towards the second semester, so towards the end of the year, we start talking about research interests, who might be good academics to speak to, with the goal of sort of having a supervisor in place at the start, towards the end of the first year or the start of the second year. And then in the second year, thinking about potentially a second supervisor. So it's something that you don't have to have in place before you apply. It's something that you develop after talking to various academics, getting a sense of whose research interest fits yours. But it's very much something that happens during the coursework phase. It's not something that has to be set in stone before you arrive.
And absolutely, and we have had many students who've come into the program, into the course, they're thinking, oh, they want to do this, and by the end of the first year, they actually don't want to do that at all. And then the second year, then they just decide, okay. But during the second year, and we will do more of this, we do put information sessions on where different members of faculty can present their research interests as well. And so you start to, you start broad, and then you start to narrow down, and then you have an opportunity to, as Reshad said, to talk to supervisors. So around about the second year, when you all have a thesis workshop, that's when you'll be allocated to supervisor, and then you figure out your other supervisors from that point. So another question, can you give a scholarship opportunities for PhD program and their main requirements? Yes, so for every student who is admitted into the program, they will also meet the threshold for receiving a scholarship. So they receive a scholarship score. It's an average scholarship score of 80. And so we will offer a place and also a scholarship at the same time. Okay. Any other questions, or did I miss anything? All right, so let me just sort of emphasize again, there is a frequently asked questions site, so you can scan that QR code and you can go straight to that. Everybody who's registered today will receive a recording of this as well. It'll be posted online so you can revisit what we said. You are absolutely welcome to ask questions after the session at that email address. And one last question, what's one thing you wish you knew? Okay, this is a good question just to end off with everybody. So what's the one thing you wish you knew prior to commencing the program? So maybe a quick answer from everybody. So Jinjin, what one thing did you wish you knew before entering the program?
Let me think. That's a good question. For me, I feel like I have no regret. I think I don't have anything that I wish I could do before my program. Maybe I should read more papers and then build on my foundation. Like try to explore what I am really interested before I get started.
Okay, good. So Jacob, what this is the last, just maybe 10-second answer. What's the one thing you wish you knew prior to commencing the program?
I wish I had made myself more familiar with all of the things that were on offer to us. Like, for example, I found out only recently that some of my colleagues were getting a free gym membership, and I had never done that. So I just wish I knew what was available.
And Ahsan, you were going to have the final word on this. What did you wish you knew?
I wish I knew that it's gonna take like 2 or even like 4 or 5 years to publish a paper. Yeah, because I'm not a patient person. Yeah, so I'm learning to be patient now. Yeah.
Good. Great. And I think I wish I knew that it's okay not to always be okay, really. It's a journey, and it's okay. And Reshad, final 10-second comment?
No, I think your last point is what I probably would have said. So I think that's a great way to end.
Right. All right, so we will end, and absolutely thank you for listening. And this is a slide. At the end of the year, we have a faculty celebrating graduate research event where everybody comes together. It's a great day, and this is a picture from that a couple of years ago. So we look forward to receiving your application and or questions, and take care, everybody, and good night, and be safe.